tomorrow that you go into work and your boss tells you your paycheck is going to be delayed. The company can't spend the money on payroll. Well, this is exactly the crisis that many Americans faced last month when the government shut down because of the budget process. Many Americans do not understand how the budget process works. And what's even worse is some Americans may seem that they don't care. Because according to USA Today, where an Edison Research Center conducted exit polls during the last election, only 19.4% of Americans aged 18 to 29 who were eligible to vote chose not to. And statistically speaking, even less vote in the congressional elections, because those may seem as less important. However, it is important to understand that the congressional elections are even more important, because these are the officials that will pass the budget. And many Americans may think that the budget won't affect me personally. However, according to the Office of Management and Budget, in 2010, an appropriation bill was passed that halted the issue of new federal student loans as they began to transition to a new system. And in the case of a government shutdown, tax returns and student loans can be delayed, resulting in many young Americans, such as ourselves, wondering how we will pay for our education. So today I will teach you about the federal budget process. First, I will teach you about the executive office and its role in creating the budget. Secondly, I will teach you about the role of Congress in amending the budget and passing the budget. And third, I will teach you about what happens after the vote. So the first step is the president will submit his budget proposal to the Office of Management and Budget. This proposal will summarize which programs he wants to fund, which programs he wants to stop funding, as well as his recommendations for how high taxes should be and if we should raise our debt ceiling or not. The debt ceiling is how much money we can borrow to create his desires. The Office of Management and Budget is a complete bipartisan office because the president does not choose who works there. Its officials are not elected by the American people. In fact, they are employees, just as employees for any other company. This office is created of aspiring lawyers, politicians, and financial advisors. The president submits this as an executive bill, so the Office of Management and Budget must adhere to his budget proposal. They cannot lobby for their own wishes. The Office of Management and Budget will take a look at his proposal and create an analyzation, projections of what the economy looks like now and what it will look like if the budget is passed. Using these analyzations, the Office of Management and Budget creates regulations for each federal agency. For instance, which programs they can fund, how much money they will have to choose where to put the funding. The federal agencies will take these regulations, and using these regulations, they will create ideas for their budget proposals. They will create first, second, and third drafts, final drafts that are sent back to the Office of Management and Budget for review. According to the Office of Management and Budget, there are over 500 reviews each fiscal year to make sure that the federal agencies are following these regulations and that everything that they are doing is deemed legal and appropriate by law. Once these final drafts are in place and all the federal agencies have created their final budget proposals, the appropriation bills are sent back to the president for final review. Once the president has reviewed them and has approved of them, he will submit them back to Congress by the first Monday of February. And this is done so that they have time to vote and to amend these budget bills. Now, once they have reached Congress, Congress will then send these budget bills to the Congressional Budget Office. The Congressional Budget Office, it does the same kind of job as the Office of Management and Budget. They create analyzations, they test out what the economy will look like. However, they will give testimonials and hearings in Congress to suggest how high taxes must be, because Congress is who votes on taxes, not the president. Once the Congressional Budget Office has given testimonials and hearings, Congress must then divide into 12 Senate and House committees based on each federal agency. Some of these agencies include education, transportation, or agriculture. The 12 committees in each department will then take a look at these appropriation bills. Appropriation bills basically means the president and the Congression and the Office of Management and Budget will say, this is how much money you have to spend. Now you get to pick where it goes, which programs will get how much money. Using these appropriation bills, the congressmen will then begin to debate and amend these bills to make sure that everything is being done, for the programs, but using the less amount of money as possible. They will continue to amend these bills until they are each passed through Congress. Once they are passed through Congress, they cannot be touched. However, until then, the federal agencies can amend these bills and add more appropriations to these bills. This can take a while because, according to Dr. Josh Weldon Jones, who wrote for the Financial Review in 1942, this document, the budget proposal, can be over 1,000 pages long, detailing every cent, where every cent should go, which programs the president wants to support, and which programs he wants to end. Congress must vote on these appropriation bills by midnight on September 30th. Now, what happens after the vote? There are three possible outcomes. The first is the most desirable. Congress will vote on these and pass them through Congress, and the president will sign these appropriation bills into law. If this is done by the deadline, everything goes as normal. The executive office now has the legal authority to spend the money, and life goes on as normal. However, there are two other outcomes which are least desirable. The first outcome is, let's say Congress passes the bills through the House and the Senate. However, the president vetoes the bill. Maybe there's an appropriation bill he does not agree with. This is what happened in 1995 when Bill Clinton refused to sign bills into law by the deadline, which resulted in a government shutdown. During this time, Congress has two options. They can either override his veto using a 2/3 vote. However, if they are unable to do so, they must continue to amend the bills until the president will approve them and sign them into law. Now, the third outcome is what we most recently saw. According to David Espo, who is a top Associated Press contributor, particularly in terms of Congress and politics, Congressman Ted Cruz was unhappy about one of the appropriation bills, and he lobbied to veto the bill, or he lobbied not to pass the bill through Congress. In doing so, by midnight on September 30th, we were unable to pass specific laws that were necessary to continue approving the budget, and the government shut down. During this time, the president does not have any power. He is unable to he is unable to sign or veto the laws until they are passed through Congress. However, the Office of Management and Budget can choose which agencies are needed during this time. So if the government shuts down, there are some agencies that are deemed unnecessary, and many employees who are deemed unnecessary. Until Congress can amend these budget bills, until they can pass through Congress, the government will remain shut down. They can't really do anything until these budget bills are passed, as they are what continues to run the government. Finally, they will pass the bill through Congress, the president will pass it, and we can continue to spend the money that is needed on these specific programs. So today I taught you about the federal budget process. First, I taught you about the role of the executive office in creating the budget. Secondly, I taught you about Congress's role in amending the budget and passing the budget. And third, I taught you about what happens after the vote. It is important to understand how this process works so that we can elect the right officials that will get the job done. And it is important as first-time voters and college students to continue to have our voices heard. Thank you.